this receptor has a Moldavite in it, and it allows you to communicate energy and information from galactic center. A Moldavite, this is a meteor that crashed in Moldavia 140,000 years ago, which is near the Molda River, which is why it's called Moldavite, Moldavia, Molda River, all that. And it's very valuable now in the New Age community. It's getting more and more hard to find. But now they've gone from the Yaqui twins to the Stargate. So now they're talking about communicating energy from galactic center. Scorpios, which changed the most as well, the whole sign of Scorpio shouldn't even be called scorpions anymore, because Scorpios went from being the irascible arachnid, where if it's not, and don't worry about it, if they're criticizing you or mad at you, if they're not stinging you, they'll sting themselves. If they're left alone, they'll go, well, you suck, but I suck more. And I hate your guts, but I hate me more. And so they've gone from the scorpion to the gray lizard to the eagle, and the whole new phase of Scorpio now, and their colors have gone from red and black to amethyst. The whole new phase of Scorpio is the phoenix. So they should be called phoenixes, because now what they're about is transforming, transmuting, and transmogrifying energy. What Scorpios are great at is completely starting over, picking themselves up, dusting themselves off, and moving on to something new, and just leaving everything in the past. Melissa's a Scorpio. You know, we're having problems with our landlord who wants to kick us out and charge more rent. I think it's the end of the world. You know, Melissa's like, yeah, I want to move someplace else. It'd be fun. And I'm like, no, there's nothing good about me getting kicked out of my house. She's like, no, it'd be great. We'll have a new place. So anyway, so Scorpions have all shifted. So this is the fundamental change that's happening. Now, these squares, to give you an idea, between 1930 and 1933, welcome, nice to have you. Glad you found it, actually. It's, you know, they stuck me in a corner somewhere, so it's good to have you. Between 1930 and 1933, right before the stock market crashed in October of 1929, and it didn't when the stock market crashed, it didn't really affect everything. It really started happening in 1930 or so, because then the effects, I mean, nobody cared that a couple of banks lost some money. Then people started going, well, something's really going on, runs on the bank started, and it all happened when the first Pluto-Uranus square happened, and there were 5 Pluto-Uranus squares between 1930 and 1933. There were 3 in the 1960s. One in 1963, right when Kennedy died. The other one in 68, when Martin Luther King was shot, and that was April. And then in June of 68 as well, which is Robert Kennedy, but it was also the same. It had an effect on the Tet Offensive, on the Vietnam War, on the riots in the streets. You saw the Democratic National Convention. I mean, all this weird crap that happened. So all these Pluto-Uranus squares. And there were 3 in the 60s. There are 7 between 2012 and 2015. And that's why you're seeing the collapse of the Obama administration, all these massive scandals that are coming out, the restructuring of government. I think one of the most important Supreme Court decisions to come down for medicine just came down where they ruled against myriad genetics to say you can't invent a human being. You can't take a gene that's already there and claim you invented it. And by the way, if you looked at the decision of the Supreme Court, this was their argument. Their argument was, well, if you take a piece of a tree and you turn it into a baseball bat, that's an invention. So we should be able to patent the tree as well as the baseball bat. That was their argument in front of the Supreme Court. And they were like, nah, that's not going to fly. So now that's great, because now they're taking these breast cancer tests and these DNA tests and all that, which were like $4,000. Pretty soon they'll be like $100, and you'll be able to take a swab and all this. So it opens up competition to everything and everyone. I don't know. I have a TV show I watch called Orphan Black now, which is about a girl who's been cloned 5 or 6 times, and now I don't know what's going to happen to the show, because they're like, no, we're owned by this massive company, and now there's 5 of us. So let me give you an idea about all these, and if you want to write down some of these, for example. September, what was the big thing? Melissa, you knew the big thing that happened in June 24th. I can't even remember that back that far. If you just think about it, I know there was some major thing that happened right here. September 19th was particularly unique because this was the Pluto-Uranus square. This was, yeah. Oh yeah, okay, this one here, June 24th, this was the Obamacare decision by the Supreme Court, which has changed the fundamental nature of society. So that was a major Pluto square issue that caused massive division, which caused states to revolt, which has caused, as Supreme Courts in other states, and Rick Perry says we're out. South Carolina declared the Supreme Court decision unconstitutional. So this was the Obamacare ruling, which massively divided society. This one here, September 19th, if you look at everything that happened, September 11th was Benghazi, the death of Ambassador Stevens, the big revolts. The 19th was Hurricane Sandy at the same time, in that period of time, which wiped out a big chunk of the East Coast. As a matter of fact, it was the fulfillment of a series of visions that we had, because I taught a remote viewing. I used to teach remote